North Yorkshire, a place of extraordinary natural beauty. Sweeping landscapes that stretch to the horizon. Villages where everyone knows everyone. The kind of place where you'd think nothing terrible could ever happen. But in June 2005, this peaceful corner of England became the center of a mystery that would haunt a family for years to come. A mystery that began with a simple goodbye and ended with questions that remain unanswered to this day. Jenny Nicholl was 19 years old in the summer of 2005. To those who knew her, she was vibrant, creative, and fiercely independent. With her fair hair often pulled back in a ponytail, green eyes that sparkled with life, and an easy smile that could light up a room, Jenny was a familiar and beloved face around Richmond. She was the kind of young woman who lit up a room when she walked in, who made friends easily and kept them for life, and who lived life on her own terms without apology. Standing 5'6" with a slim build, Jenny had that natural beauty that didn't require much effort. She was comfortable in her own skin, usually dressed casually in jeans and trainers, often wearing her favorite khaki-hooded Parker jacket that had become something of a trademark. She was down to earth, approachable, the kind of person you could talk to about anything. Jenny would spend hours practicing her guitar, perfecting her sound, working on new songs. She performed at local pubs around Richmond, places where the regulars knew her by name and looked forward to her performances. The music scene knew her well, and she was building something special. There was talk of maybe recording some demos, maybe trying to get signed to a small label. The future looked bright, but Jenny's love for the outdoors rivaled even her love for music. She was an avid camper who felt most at home under the stars, surrounded by nature and away from the noise of modern life. Away from the noise of everyday life, just her and the natural world, Jenny found a peace that nothing else could provide. It was this combination of independence and adventurous spirit that made what happened at Next seem almost plausible to those who didn't know the full story. Jenny was the type who would pack up her camping gear and head out into the countryside without much notice, who valued her freedom and her ability to come and go as she pleased. She didn't need permission or approval. She was 19, an adult capable of making her own decisions about her life. Jenny lived with her parents, Anne and Brian, in a modest home. Anne had worked as a cleaner for years, putting in long hours to help support the family and make ends meet. Brian was a retired Army major, a man of discipline and structure, who had served his country for decades before settling into civilian life. By all accounts, they were an ordinary family living an ordinary life. Meanwhile, Jenny worked at the local store, a job that helped her earn money while she pursued her dreams with the band. She was known around the store, a friendly face behind the counter, who always had a smile for customers and a kind word for the elderly shoppers who came in regularly. She'd recently prepaid for a series of 25 tanning sessions at a local salon, planning ahead for the summer months and wanting to look her best for upcoming gigs. She was making plans, looking forward to the future, living her life like any other 19-year-old girl with dreams and ambitions, and her whole life stretched out before her. And then came June 30th, 2005. A Thursday that seemed like any other summer day. The sun was shining. Birds were singing. Jenny told her mother, Anne, that she was heading out and wouldn't be back that night. Nothing unusual about that announcement. Based on what she took with her, it looked like she was planning to go camping, Anne had no reason to worry. This was just Jenny being Jenny, doing what she'd done dozens of times before. Her daughter valued her independence, and Anne respected that. The next day, Friday, July 1st, Jenny had plans she'd made earlier in the week. She was supposed to pick up a friend for a night out in Richmond. They'd made arrangements, something they'd both been looking forward to, a chance to catch up and have some fun. But she never showed up at the agreed time. Her friend waited at home, growing increasingly confused as the minutes turned to hours. She tried calling Jenny's mobile phone and called again and again. No answer. It wasn't like Jenny to just not show up without saying anything. She was reliable about plans with friends. She might be free-spirited and independent, but she wasn't rude or inconsiderate. If she couldn't make it, she'd call, she'd text, she'd let you know. This silence was unusual and increasingly worrying. By Monday, July 4th, the concern had deepened into something more serious. Jenny hadn't shown up for her shift at the store where she worked. This was completely out of character. Jenny was responsible about her job. Her manager tried to reach her repeatedly. Her co-workers wondered where she was, trading worried glances as her shift time came and went with no sign of her. Now people were genuinely worried. This wasn't like Jenny at all. Something was wrong. 4 days after she'd left home, Anne knew in her gut that something terrible had happened. A mother's intuition, perhaps, or simply the accumulated weight of too many unanswered calls, too many broken plans, too much silence where there should have been contact. She couldn't wait any longer. She went to the police and reported her daughter missing. Later that same day, while out searching the local area, desperately hoping to find some clue about where Jenny had gone, Anne made a discovery that turned worry into dread and confirmed her worst fears. There, parked and abandoned in the car park of a local pub, sitting exactly where it shouldn't be, was Jenny's white car. If Jenny had driven away in her car that Thursday, planning to go camping, why was it here in a pub car park in Richmond? Where was she? How had she gotten wherever she'd gone? What had happened in the hours and days since she'd driven away from home? The moment Jenny's car was found abandoned, this case took on a new and urgent dimension. This was no longer just a young woman who hadn't checked in with her family. Something was wrong. Something was very, very wrong. The police responded quickly, understanding that time is critical in missing persons cases. A description of Jenny went out immediately to the public and to media outlets across the region. 5'6", slim build, green eyes, fair hair down to her shoulders that she often wore in a ponytail. Last seen wearing blue jeans, black trainers, a sleeveless crop top, and her favorite khaki-hooded Parker jacket, the kind of casual outfit any young woman might wear on a summer day, planning to spend time outdoors. Within hours, hundreds of posters flooded Richmond and the surrounding areas. Jenny's face appeared on lampposts, in shop windows, on community bulletin boards, in the windows of local businesses. Volunteers organized search parties, covering as much ground as possible. Local residents who'd never met Jenny joined the search efforts. Everyone wanted to believe Jenny would come home safe and sound. Everyone wanted to be the one who found her. A few days into the search, Anne and Brian made the decision to join the search efforts themselves. They couldn't just sit at home by the phone waiting for news. They had to do something, anything. The feeling of helplessness was unbearable. They decided to search the sandbank plantation themselves, a wooded area not far from Richmond that they knew Jenny sometimes visited. The woods were dense, the undergrowth thick and difficult to navigate, but they pushed forward with determination, calling her name, looking for any sign of their daughter. And there, partially hidden beneath fallen leaves and forest debris, they found something that made their blood run cold and confirmed their darkest fears. Jenny's cosmetics, items she would have taken with her if she was planning to be away, and a nightdress, the kind of thing she'd pack for a camping trip. They were just lying there in the woods, abandoned and exposed to the elements, as if someone had thrown them aside without care or thought. It was clear now, horrifyingly and undeniably clear, that this was no ordinary disappearance. Something terrible had happened to Jenny in these woods or nearby. The question was no longer if something bad had happened, but what exactly had occurred and where Jenny was now. On July 7th, just over a week after Jenny had left home, an incident room was established at Richmond Police Station. Banks of phones were set up. Maps of the area covered the walls. Photographs of Jenny were pinned up alongside timelines and evidence boards. This was now a full-scale missing persons investigation with all the resources the department could muster. 20 officers were assigned to the case, working around the clock in shifts to find out what had happened to Jenny Nicholl. The detective in charge made a public plea, standing before television cameras and newspaper reporters, speaking directly to wherever Jenny might be. His voice was calm but urgent. He begged her to come forward, to just let her parents know she was okay. He appealed to her sense of family, asking her to make any kind of contact, even if she didn't want to come home, even if she was angry or scared. Just a sign that she was alive and safe. That's all anyone wanted. That's all her parents needed to know. Anne and Brian sat by the phone at home, keeping it close at all times, waiting, hoping, praying, jumping every time it rang, their hearts racing with anticipation and dread, praying it would be Jenny on the other end, or at least news from the police. Every hour that passed without news was agony. Every day that went by without contact felt like a lifetime. The searches intensified across the North Yorkshire countryside with military precision and determination. Volunteer groups, police officers, specially trained search dogs, and their handlers covered massive areas of terrain. But days turned into weeks, and still there was no sign of Jenny. It was as if she'd vanished into thin air, leaving behind only her car, some personal items in the woods, and a family desperate for answers. And then, as investigators dug deeper into Jenny's life, trying to piece together her movements and relationships in the days and weeks before her disappearance, they discovered something that would change the entire direction of the case. Something that would reveal Jenny had been living a secret life that even her parents knew nothing about. As detectives interviewed Jenny's friends and acquaintances, building a picture of her life and social circle, they uncovered something disturbing. Jenny had been keeping secrets, significant secrets. She'd been seeing someone romantically, someone she'd never told her parents about, someone she'd kept hidden from most people in her life. And when investigators learned who this person was, the case took on a much darker and more sinister dimension. His name was David Hodgson, a married father of 2 daughters, a man in his 40s, living what appeared on the surface to be a normal, respectable life with his wife and family. But beneath that ordinary surface was something deeply wrong. Jenny had gone to school with his 2 daughters. They'd known each other for years through that connection. But the relationship between David and Jenny went far beyond casual acquaintance or family friend. The truth was even more disturbing than investigators initially suspected. David Hodgson had been going out Jenny since she was just a child in school, still figuring out who she was, vulnerable to the attention of an older man who presented himself as someone who understood her, someone who made her feel special and mature, someone who was actually a predator, carefully cultivating his victim. At first, when police brought him in for questioning, David denied everything. No relationship, nothing inappropriate, nothing to hide, whatsoever. He was just someone who knew Jenny through his daughters. But under pressure, faced with mounting evidence and persistent questioning, he eventually admitted some of the truth. He confessed that he and Jenny had slept together on 5 occasions. He was quick to add, almost defensive about it, that it only happened after she turned 16, as if that somehow made it acceptable or legal or morally justified, as if the age of consent erased the massive power dynamic between a 40-some married man and a teenager barely out of childhood. Whether his claim about her age was true or not, and there was reason to doubt his honesty, the relationship was clearly inappropriate on every level. The power imbalance was undeniable. This was a middle-aged man who had known Jenny since she was a child, who had watched her grow up through his daughter's friendship with her, who had groomed her for years before the relationship became physical. This was manipulation. This was predatory behavior. This was wrong on every conceivable level. David and his brother Robert knew the countryside around Richmond intimately. They'd constructed hides and huts in remote wooded areas, makeshift structures hidden from view, where they'd go to drink, play cards, and camp away from prying eyes and the responsibilities of daily life. These weren't official structures or registered camping sites, just rough shelters hidden in the forest, known only to those who'd built them and the few friends they'd brought there. David insisted, when questioned, that he'd never taken Jenny to these places. He maintained that while they'd had a relationship, regrettable as it was kept separate from these private spaces. But DNA evidence told a different story. Forensic tests proved beyond any doubt that David and Jenny had been intimate in at least 2 of these woodland hides. The scientific evidence was irrefutable and damning. Whatever David claimed, Jenny had been to these remote locations with him. Places where they were completely alone. Places where no one would see them or hear them. Places where anything could happen without witnesses. 9 days after Jenny was last seen, David Hodgson was brought in for formal recorded questioning. Sitting across from detectives in an interview room, he maintained his story. He wasn't in a relationship with her. Not anymore. He hadn't seen her. He didn't know where she was. He played the role of a man who'd made a mistake, but had nothing to do with her disappearance. The officers weren't buying it. They'd seen too much evidence that contradicted his claims. They knew he was lying, but they needed more. They needed proof that could stand up in court. Evidence that would convince a jury beyond reasonable doubt. And then something happened that gave everyone a brief glimmer of hope. Something that seemed to suggest Jenny was alive after all. On July 13th, almost 2 weeks after Jenny had vanished without a trace, text messages began arriving on the phones of her friends and family. Messages that seemed to explain everything that appeared to solve the mystery. First to Jenny's friend, Jennifer, a message that read, "Hi, Jen. I know everyone's going to be mad. Tell them I'm sorry. Living in Scotland with my boyfriend, myself. Dad's going to kill me. Mom, don't give a... These messages, according to cell tower data, had been sent from around Carlisle, a city in the north of England near the Scottish border. The next day, July 14th, a longer message came through to Brian, her father. Why do you hate me? I know Mom does. Told her I was going. I ain't coming back, and the pigs won't find me. I'm happy living up here. Everyone hates me. Tell the pigs I'm nearly 20. Ain't coming back. For a moment, there was relief that washed over everyone who'd been searching desperately for Jenny. She was alive. She hadn't been harmed. She'd run away to Scotland. She was angry with her parents, rebelling, starting fresh somewhere new with a boyfriend no one knew about. It wasn't ideal. It wasn't what anyone wanted. But at least she was okay. But detectives weren't convinced. The messages included personal details that only someone close to Jenny would know. Problems with her car, jumping out of gear. The names of her friends. Details about her relationship with her mother. But there was something off about them. Something that didn't quite ring true. In cases where people disappear voluntarily, there are usually clear signs of preparation. Withdrawing money from bank accounts, travel bookings, telling someone where they're going, some kind of planning. Jenny had done none of these things. No money withdrawn. She'd prepaid for tanning sessions and only used 2. Her phone was never activated again after those messages. The detectives believed someone else had sent those messages. Someone trying to create a false trail, to buy time, to make it look like Jenny had left of her own accord. In a groundbreaking move for the region, investigators brought in Professor Malcolm Coulthard, a forensic linguist who'd worked on several high-profile cases. His job was to analyze the text messages scientifically. Professor Coulthard examined over 100 messages from David, 11 from Jenny, and the 3 suspicious messages. He concluded it was highly unlikely Jenny sent those messages. He also confirmed that David shared numerous features with the sender of the suspicious messages and was among a very small group of possible suspects. Someone had tried to mimic Jenny's style but failed. And there was more. On the days those messages were sent, David had hired a car. He couldn't account for his whereabouts. The rental car had racked up hundreds of miles that matched the distances to Carrile and the Scottish borders exactly. November 3rd, 2005, the announcement came. This was now a murder investigation for Ran. The confirmation was devastating. In March 2006, investigators found Jenny's teddy bear and portable stereo at Sandbach Plantation, the first concrete evidence placing her there. Over 150 acres were searched exhaustively, but Jenny remained hidden. May 2007, David Hodgson was charged with murder. The trial lasted 5 weeks. Jenny's family endured her private life being dissected publicly. David claimed Jenny had run away from an abusive father, an allegation the judge called baseless. The prosecution presented the DNA evidence, the linguistic analysis, the rental car records, the timeline. They painted a picture of a jealous man who had groomed a teenager and killed her when he lost control. In February 2008, after 10 hours of deliberation, the jury's verdict was unanimous. Guilty. David Hodgson was sentenced to life with a minimum of 18 years. The judge said the evidence was overwhelming and that Hodgson had shown no remorse. David has never revealed where Jenny's body is. Anne and Brian refused to ask him, unwilling to give him that power. Their case helped establish Helen's Law in 2021, ensuring killers who won't reveal body locations face this in parole decisions. David's appeals have failed. His parole has been denied, with Helen's Law cited as a major factor somewhere in North Yorkshire. Jenny Nicholl waits to be found. Her parents still hope for answers. Her story reminds us how predators hide in plain sight, how manipulation starts young, and how the absence of closure creates unbearable pain. Jenny was 19. She loved camping under stars. She played guitar and made people laugh. She had her whole life ahead of her. David Hodgson took it all away. Thanks for watching, guys. If you enjoyed this video, please like and share it. Don't forget to subscribe to the channel and press the bell icon so you can be the first to hear about such real-life stories.